In Ukraine, the joint marathon continues on the 1+1 channel. I'm Solomia Vitvitska, and this is the TSN News broadcast. 2 civilian Russian terrorists were killed in Kostiantynivka, and 3 more were wounded. There are also casualties in other settlements of the Kramatorsk district in Donetsk region, which the Russians shelled heavily. In the Kherson region, there is also 1 dead and 7 wounded. Residents of Stanislav came under attack from an enemy drone. A man died from fatal injuries, and a woman was hospitalized. The rest of the injured are in Kherson. The Russians shelled the city with artillery and drones, damaging 3 apartment buildings, 7 private houses, a cell tower, and an administrative building. 2 people were injured in the Sami region. Over the course of the day, the enemy shelled nearly 30 settlements in the region. As a result of a strike by an enemy drone in the Velikopisarivska community, a 45-year-old woman was injured. In Krasnopilska, a Russian drone wounded a pensioner. In Romenska, a fire broke out due to a Shahed drone attack. Windows were shattered in warehouses, apartment buildings, and private homes. As a result of Russian shelling in Kharkiv, the metro did not operate for almost 3 days. This morning, long lines formed at bus stops, and city residents spent hours getting to work. And in some homes, water disappeared along with the electricity. People were collecting water from wells. KTSN correspondent Yulia Boyko will tell us whether the situation has improved.
Monday morning in Kharkiv began without the metro. Due to the power outage, the subway stopped and thousands of people had to get to work however they could. The city launched additional bus routes so that Kharkiv residents could reach the city center from any district. Some people had to wait a long time for their minibus, while others were luckier.
I was coming from the Industrialna metro station and it was really great. Let me tell you, the interval was literally just 5 minutes. And there was even room to stand, meaning the transport wasn't overcrowded. If I take the metro, it takes me about an hour to get from home to work. An hour and 10 minutes. Now I need almost 2 hours.
I'm coming from Kolodna Hora. I took tram number 3 to Radyanska. I waited about 20 minutes. They said not everyone could fit on the previous route, but on mine, everyone got on. Now I'm waiting for the 55.
The Kharkiv metro did not operate for 2 days. Only this morning at 8 did it resume service. They tried to restart the subway the day before, but due to a lack of electricity, it only worked for about an hour then. Today, the train started running again, but as city residents say, the interval between trains is up to half an hour.
Train service on the metro line has been restored. If the voltage drops below the permissible level, train service may be temporarily suspended.
Due to a lack of electricity, entire districts of the city were left without power over the weekend. Because of this, many buildings were also left without water as the pumps were not working. Long lines formed at the wells where Kharkiv residents traditionally collect drinking water. This morning, water was finally supplied, but people continue to stock up. They say they don't know what will happen tomorrow.
Right now we have it, everything is fine at the moment. Well, it's just in case, so to speak. Yesterday there wasn't any. And the elevator isn't working right now either.
Given the situation in the country, you need to have at least 5 or 6 bottles of water at home as a reserve. That's why we use that water, because the sewage system isn't working and there's no water. In
the region, electricity outage schedules are in effect. Energy workers are implementing between 2 and 4 outage shifts at the same time to maintain the stability of the power system. Yulia Boyko, Doksy Bugayenko, Kharkiv, TSN 1+1. Marathon Yedini.
News. A fire at a Russian port, friendly drones paid a visit to Black Sea TWAPs. There are reports of a possible strike near one of the piers. According to preliminary information, the attack was carried out by naval drones. The TWAPs port is important for Russian infrastructure. Among the cargo transported from there are oil and petroleum products, grain, mineral fertilizers, and agricultural products. The last time this port was attacked was on November 2nd. At that time, the Russians suspended fuel exports. Overall, the Ministry of Defense of the aggressor country reports 71 drones shot down. 7 of them were over the Black Sea, 3 over occupied Crimea, and nearly 30 over the Bryansk region. The United States is a strategic partner, not an enemy, which is why everyone is afraid of Donald Trump, but Ukraine is not. Volodymyr Zelensky stated this in an interview with The Guardian. He also expressed confidence that the established relationship between the 2 countries was, at one time, significantly influenced by King Charles III of the United Kingdom. And this happened after a not particularly productive meeting between the parties in the Oval Office where Trump publicly reproached Zelensky. As for Russia, the head of state suggests that the Kremlin may attack a European Union country even before the war with Ukraine is over. They say that Putin is in a stalemate because he has no real successes on the battlefield. He wants at least some victories and the opening of a new front. Moreover, the Kremlin's master is already waging a hybrid confrontation, testing NATO's nerves for resilience. The lack of real progress in the war is also prompting Putin to intensify attacks on our energy infrastructure in order to intimidate and break the Ukrainians. Symbolically, during this interview at the Mariinsky Palace, the lights went out twice. Zelensky responded to this blackout with humor and joked, saying, "That's our reality these days."
Various problems. Electricity, the essential force that powers our world. Electricity, even you see, even in the presidential palace.
50,000 occupiers in the Pokrovsk direction, 35 airstrikes and 104 guided aerial bombs, all about the situation at the front over the past day. The General Staff recorded 265 combat engagements. The hottest spot was in the Pokrovsk sector. There, Ukrainian forces repelled 97 attacks. In his phone conversation yesterday with TSN Week host Alla Mazur, Commander-in-Chief Alexander Shirsky reported that at least 50,000 occupiers have been amassed in this section of the front. According to Shirsky, the situation there is under control, but plans have been made for various possible developments. The Institute for the Study of War also noted that the enemy's offensive in the Pokrovsk direction is temporarily slowing down. Shirsky confirmed this in a phone conversation and also noted that the Russians are carrying out active attacks in other directions as well, the southern Slobozhansky, Lyman, Kostiantynivka and Oleksandrivka sectors. Each of these directions saw between 20 and 30 combat engagements recorded. And overall, in the past day, the armed forces of Ukraine destroyed 7 tanks, 7 armored vehicles and 9 artillery systems. The total enemy losses in manpower amounted to nearly 1,100 personnel. We still have some tough times ahead, but at least we definitely won't have anything to be ashamed of. The former commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine and now Ukraine's ambassador to the United Kingdom commented on the Wall Street Journal article about his alleged involvement in the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipelines. The publication, citing its own sources, claims that the group of Ukrainian military personnel acted under the direct command of Valery Zaluzhny. One of the suspects was detained on September 30th. However, the local judiciary decided not to extradite Volodymyr Zhuravlov to Germany, arguing that Ukraine has the right to self-defense against Russia, including through attacks on the enemy's economic infrastructure. Another Ukrainian citizen, Serhiy Kuznetsov, who is also a suspect in the case, was arrested in Italy. By December, Italian judges will decide whether to extradite the man to Hamburg at the request of the German prosecutor's office. The defense has already filed an appeal and is awaiting a response, while Kuznetsov himself has been on a hunger strike since October 31st. Dmytro Lubinets, the Ukrainian Parliament Commissioner for Human Rights, says that the man's health condition is critical. Meanwhile, for Germany itself, there is a risk of straining relations with Ukraine in connection with this case, especially against the backdrop of Berlin being the largest financial donor of military aid to Kyiv, and already now there are calls among the opposition to halt this aid due to the alleged involvement in the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipelines. Although those close to German Chancellor Friedrich Merz believe they will be able to overcome this resistance to import millions of tons of Russian oil products through a loophole in the sanctions. Australian companies have found themselves in a scandal. The details of the case were revealed by The Guardian. Australia stopped direct purchases of Russian oil after the full-scale invasion. However, since 2023, Australian companies have imported over 3 million tons of oil products of Russian origin. They did this through Singapore. This became possible due to a loophole in government sanctions, which allows the import of Russian oil that has been processed by a third country. And in fact, this scheme contributes to increased oil production in Russia and fills the budget of the aggressor country with money for waging war. The day of the raids, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau and the Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office are conducting a large-scale operation to expose corruption in the energy sector. Numerous photos of bags filled with money were published by NABU on their Telegram channel, explaining that they have documented the activities of a high-level criminal organization. According to the statement, its members developed a corrupt scheme to influence strategic enterprises in the state sector, including Energoatom. The criminal organization received 10 to 15% kickbacks from its contracts. These payments were made by counterparties who were threatened with blocked payments or loss of supplier status. A former official from the State Property Fund and a former law enforcement officer were involved in the scheme. Although they did not have official authority, they controlled personnel decisions, procurement, and financial flows through their connections in the government. According to NABU, the case was investigated for almost 15 months, during which they collected about 1,000 hours of audio recordings, and dozens of searches are still ongoing. A number of media outlets reported today about the searches being conducted by the National Anti-Corruption Bureau. In particular, it was mentioned that investigative actions were taking place at the home of the former Minister of Energy and now Minister of Justice, Herman Halushenko. TSN also sent a request for information regarding the search of businessman Timur Mindic. NABU has not yet responded to the inquiry. Regarding the case in the energy sector, NABU has been posting information on social media since this morning and is also releasing audio recordings of conversations between the case's subjects. Moreover, they distinguish them by nicknames. And so far, not a single surname has been mentioned.
As a result of the work carried out, thousands of hours of audio recordings have been obtained, which serve as evidence of the activities of a high-level criminal organization operating in the energy and defense sectors. Among the currently identified members of the criminal organization are a former advisor to the Minister of Energy, the Executive Director for Physical Protection and Security of the joint stock company, National Nuclear Energy Generating Company Energoatom, a well-known businessman, and 4 male employees of BKO. The main task of the criminal organization was to obtain unlawful benefits from Energoatom's counterparties.
Graves knee-deep in water and almost on the road. For about a year, there has been a scandal surrounding the Fastiv International Cemetery regarding the improper burial of war heroes. The relatives of the fallen are demanding that the authorities create the Heroes Alley, which was promised back during the ATO. In response, the authorities are not even able to install a drainage system. The families of the fallen even attended a city council session so that the mayor would hear them.
How did it all end? And why is there no honor for the heroes who gave their lives defending the country? TSN correspondent Yulia Koryenko will tell us more.
The rains came, it started to dry out here, but after that, you can't reach the graves. The water stands and seeps underneath.
The water is almost up to your knees and there's nothing but mud around the graves, and the burials are practically on the road. This is the town of Fastiv in the Kiev region, and these are the graves of war heroes.
He has been lying here for 30 years, in this damp earth right here beside him. Yes, as Oksana already said here, whenever it rains, the grave is always full of water and it keeps sinking.
Anatoly Hryhorash was Mrs. Svetlana's only son. He was killed during the fighting in Luhansk region last year. She buried him at her own expense, arranged the grave, and is now waiting for the headstone, which she also ordered with her own money. She says the local authorities only allocated a plot at the cemetery.
He was my only son and he left this world far too soon. I believe this is the least I can do today. To give to my son, to bring him flowers.
Mr. Mikola tries to make his way to his son's grave. Sometimes he has to walk sideways because the heroes are buried so closely together here. And even on several levels, because nearby, alongside the soldiers who died during the full-scale invasion, are the heroes of the ATO.
2 graves together. This is the grave of my son and our neighbor. If you separate them, there's no way to pass through. This is how the city authorities allocated the plots. That's how they distributed them. That's how they measured them. The main thing is to come, to show the place, to bury, to spend 5 minutes here, and then forget about it.
The scandal surrounding the burials at the Fastiv International Cemetery has been going on for a year now. The relatives of fallen soldiers ever since the time of the ATO expected that a Heroes Alley would appear here, and that the fallen would be honored and have a place where this respect could be paid. Instead, the city authorities still can't even lay tiles between the graves or install a drainage system so that the graves don't end up submerged in mud when it rains.
Everything is done entirely by hand?
Here, I see that someone somehow poured a concrete platform.
All of this is done by the families themselves. The monuments were poured here, they were poured together, as well as the tiles. Everything, absolutely everything, the curbs, everything is done independently. All at their own expense. Some have the money, some don't. Not everyone receives payments and not everyone can afford it. To do it with dignity. But it should look like a proper military cemetery.
The local authorities allocated additional burial space only in the 4th year of the full-scale invasion, and also near the road where Mrs. Yulia's son lies.
Trianki. Pass. They make the same mistake again without retreating. They do it. No, if you walk here, everyone will be on their heads. Again, there's no passage. Do you see how little space there is between the graves?
When it rains, she doesn't come here without rubber boots because there's no fence to keep the water from the road out. The graves get flooded, and water from under the wheels of cars passing by during downpours also pours in.
Look, you see, all the water from here goes straight onto these graves. All these benches, we made them ourselves.
These shots were filmed by TSN at the end of September. By then, Mrs. Oksana, the mother of one of the heroes, already had 100 written responses from the city authorities. Why? And still hasn't arranged the Alley of Heroes, which the relatives are demanding. We also addressed this same question to the mayor of Fastiv. Instead of an answer, his press service only provided an excerpt from the laws on civil burials. To get a response, we went with the relatives of the fallen to a city council session. But the mayor, upon seeing the journalists, simply walks away.
Let's talk about this after the session.
Instead of him, the deputy mayor for Housing and Communal Services speaks at the session. According to her, the burial of heroes will continue to take place at that cemetery. There is a project for its arrangement, but it was not approved because the relatives disagreed with it. While amendments were being made, the workers who could have installed fences and set up drainage were mobilized.
Just now I approached the entrepreneur who is responsible for installing fences and carrying out construction work. He says, I have no one left to do the work, absolutely no one. The guys, the men who were in my crew, they were all taken, mobilized. When they were finally shown the project, they disagreed with it. And that's why we ended up in this situation where we can't carry out the work right now.
The problem of improper arrangement of soldiers' graves is actually not new, according to the Ministry of Veterans Affairs. To ensure that the fallen receive the highest possible honor, the National Military Memorial Cemetery was established. As for families who bury their loved ones in local cemeteries, in such cases the concept of a military burial needs to be defined at the legislative level, and of a military cemetery. The relevant amendments to the law on funeral affairs are already prepared, and once they are adopted by Parliament, communities will be required to arrange everything according to the prescribed standard.
The law will include an obligation for us, as the ministry, to develop 2 procedures. One procedure is specifically about the creation, maintenance and protection of these military cemeteries or sectors of military burials. And there will also be to develop a procedure specifically for memorialization, what should be there. This is firstly because most communities, unfortunately, do not understand. They really want to create a dignified place, but they don't understand what should be there.
However, how to change those burials that already exist is still being decided by the Ministry of Veterans Affairs. And the relatives of the buried soldiers in Fastiv are convinced. The arrangement of the military cemetery depends on the will of the local authorities. A case in point is the neighboring Vasilkiv, where the Alley of Soldiers has existed since the time of the ATO. And even though it is now getting bigger, there are absolutely no problems with water in the graves or with access between them. Yulia Kirienko, Alexander Shian, Roman Reka, TSN1+, Marathon, United News.
At the Franco Theatre in the capital, they staged the play Military Mom, based on a script by combat medic Nialina Senatska about a woman medic who saves soldiers at the front and is torn between her family and her service. The topic is extremely relevant. Today, the director of the play, veteran Alexander Tkachuk, shares his story. After all, everyone faces the difficult choice between the duty to defend their homeland and the chance to be with their family. He staged the play a year ago at the recently established Veterans Theatre. The actors on stage are former and current servicemen and women. All the plays for this theatre are written by military personnel. The founders of the theatre believe that no one can convey and perform what is happening better than they can. Thank you. What is happening on the front lines. And society needs to hear the truth directly from them. Today, the play Military Mom is being performed not only at the Veterans Theatre, but also in other theatres, so that more people can learn the truth about the war. And this is important for future generations, says the director.
Hello, Mom, I feel bad. Where are you? Mom, come, please hurry if you love me.
Right now, in my personal opinion, Ukrainian theaters should definitely include contemporary drama in their repertoire, especially on the topic of war. We show the real emotions, experiences, and pain of the soldiers. And we immerse the audience in the atmosphere of war itself, of the trenches, but without anything traumatic, without brutality, without even blood.
Well, next, my colleagues, the hosts of 1+1, Nata Ostrovska and Yevhen Plinsky, will take over the marathon. And what will you be talking about, colleagues?
We will be talking about money. A representative of the National Bank of Ukraine will be joining us.
About taxes on parcels for Ukrainians. About the inflation report.
About the social benefits currently being offered, the 1,008 hryvnia, assistance for women who give birth, and increases to these benefits. But how will this affect the overall state of the economy in our country?
The updated TSN broadcast is at 3 p.m., so see you then, and glory to Ukraine.
Glory to the heroes.